Hey, would you do me a favor? Grab your phone or smart device and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Circuit 13 Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. I'm Rocky Brancato, the board chair. As a reminder, if you turn on the microphone, make sure you shut it off in between so we don't have feedback. And if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we can do roll call, Madam Secretary.
Good morning, everyone. Please respond when you hear your name. Mr. Travis Coy.
Good morning. Here.
Mr. Brancato.
Here.
Ms. Gina Justice.
Here.
Ms. Beth Pasek. Captain Preston Hollis.
Here.
Lieutenant Robin Polk.
Here.
Commissioner Donna Cameron Cepeda.
Present.
Ms. Chrissy Dorian is excused. Ms. Conchita Canty Jones is excused. Ms. Laura Byrne.
Here. Sorry.
Okay. Reverend Dr. Glenn Dames. Ms. Sarah Grimmick.
Good morning, here.
Markesh Thomas. Ms. Yvonne Fry is excused. Ms. Pam Jeffrey.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Williams.
Here.
Myself and Mr. Rob Parkinson.
Here.
That's all.
Thank you. And we'll just go around the table and just do introductions. Some people attend and sit at the table that are not on our roster, and they're welcome. And let's just do introductions. We'll start with Mr. Mincy.
Good morning, Patrick Menzie, Hillsborough County.
Good morning, Kay Hunter, Children's Services.
Good morning, Heather Cazzola, Hillsborough County Children's Services.
Good morning, Kim Williams, Children's Network of Hillsborough.
Juvenile Justice, Office of Prevention.
Good morning, Christine Meister from the Spring of Tampa Bay.
Hi, Ashley Baker with the Spring of Tampa Bay.
Good morning, Jeff and Debbie King, Character GPS, your guidance system for life.
Laura Byrne, Tampa Bay Parenting.
Good morning, Gina Justice, Court Administrator for the 13th Judicial Circuit.
Good morning, everyone. Davia Larabor, Pace Center for Girls, and Secretary for the Board.
Good morning, everyone. Rocky Brancato, Public Defender's Office, Chair of the Board.
Rob Parkinson, Hillsborough County Criminal Justice Office.
Kelly Hammersley, Department of Juvenile Justice, Hillsborough County, Circuit 13.
Good morning, Hillsborough County Commissioner Donna Cameron Cepeda.
Good morning, Preston Hollis. I'm Captain Criminal Investigations Division with Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
Lieutenant Robin Polk with Tampa Police.
Hey, Pam Jeffrey, Success for Kids and Families.
Good morning, Judy Royston, Juvenile Diversion with the Administrative Office of the Courts.
Travis Coy, Office of the State Attorney.
Sean Cohen, Department of Juvenile Justice Superintendent.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the November 2023 meeting?
I have, and I move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Parkinson to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Cameron Cepeda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? They'll be accepted. We'll move on to committee reports. The data-driven subcommittee report. Ms. Royston.
Okay, so the data-driven subcommittee meeting will be meeting in person probably next month. We're still investigating some options right now. Hopefully in the next couple months we'll have some recommendations and can wrap it up.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Royston? Okay, and we'll come back to the Faith Committee. Let's move on to member updates. Department of Juvenile Justice, Ms. Hammersley.
Well, I'd first like to start with our youth census here in Hillsborough County. Currently, we have 257 youth that are on some form of probation post-commitment. conditional release supervision, including day treatment, and Walker Plan probation. Of those 257 youth, we have 72 youth that meet the criteria for intensive supervision program, and they are currently involved with that. For supervised release, we have 31 youth. Of those youth, 5 of them are in the ERC, Evening Reporting Center, and we have 21 youth that are currently on electronic monitor devices. And I wanted to share with everybody today, as far as the juvenile accountability bill that is before legislation at this point, there is the House Bill 1181, and there's the Senate Bill 1274. Both of those are posted, and I can give you a brief narrative of the bills that are being presented to the legislature. It's referred to as the accountability bill, but the bills will revise penalties for youth committing firearm offenses, redesignate civil citation as delinquency citation programs, requires youth arrested for electronic monitoring violations to be placed in secure detention pending a detention hearing, requires youth on probation for felony firearm offense who are taken into custody to be placed in secure detention, requires specified sanctions for certain youth adjudicated for firearm offenses, requires DJJ to administer a graduated response matrix to hold youth accountable, allows EM for probation violations in certain circumstances, authorizes exception to revocation or suspension of driving privileges in certain circumstances, requires DJJ to establish specified class for firearm offenders, revises provisions concerning introduction of contraband into DJJ facilities, requires the state to file a probation violation within a specified period or inform the court and DJJ why such violation was not filed, and eliminates post-commitment probation. So those are some of the topics that are in both of the bills. As I said, they're both posted, and they're about 44 or so pages each. I think I have one more thing to say. Is there any questions about that at this point? Okay. Another item I'd like to bring up is that currently in Circuit 13, Juvenile Justice and Department of Children and Families, along with our CBC, community-based care provider, the managing entity, Children's Network, Hillsborough County, we're currently working on a pilot that we are addressing duly served youth that are involved with both dependency and delinquency, that there's problems with the youth going to their licensed placement and remaining at their licensed care placements and not causing a disruption in the placement. We are also looking at addressing compliance with court-ordered sanctions and what that might look like, working through that with our pilot, and also naturally encouraging youth motivation and their compliance as far as staying where they need to stay, attending school daily, and compliance with their court-ordered sanctions. So we just had our first meeting last week, and we'll continue we'll have our action steps and tasks that we're doing as we work in collaboration. So for the betterment of these youth to, be where they need to be and cooperative and compliant. Any questions?
Is there a proper name for this initiative
We
or pilot?
are going to create a name. We haven't yet attained that. So that's probably our easiest action step.
And it would be helpful in the future if, once you get all your ducks in a row, come up with an executive summary of exactly what the name of the program, what it is, obviously dual system youth and the resources that are going to be expended on it, just for this group.
Mm-hmm. Right now, we're in just the process of putting things out there, brainstorming, developing a brief narrative of a scope, and still fine-tuning some items on all that. So it's in its infancy at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hammersley, and we'll be sure to take a deep dive into the House bill and Senate bill that you informed us of, so we can come up with our own opinions on how that might impact our youth. Prevention, Ms. McGee.
Good morning, everyone. As I had mentioned at the last meeting, that of course we moved back from communications back to prevention. Also with that, we also received a new title. And my new title is Senior Regional Outreach Specialist. So if you see that name buzzing around that title, you know now who that person is. I also would like to report that we are scheduling what we call our mentoring summit. It will be in March, and it will be in Orlando. Look for more information to come with that. Also, along with this new title, of course, I've been doing outreach through the counties of Pinellas, Pasco, Hillsborough, this wonderful county here, and Polk County. In addition to my duties with outreach, I will also be tasked with also doing some technical assistance for state-funded programs. And right now, that's pretty much all that I have.
Any questions for Ms. McGee? And Ms. McGee, should we continue to call you under the title of prevention at this meeting?
Absolutely.
All right.
I'll still answer.
Thank you. Detention, and is that, I didn't catch your last name. Welcome to the board. We're happy to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. Okay, for Hillsborough Detention, we're 80-bed, basically 80-bed capacity. Our previous month, we were at 64 youth. We're currently at 66. Right now, we have 10 committed youth and 19 vacancies. As far as our plan for the vacancies, we're right now participating in local job fairs and basically just highlighting the benefits of our benefits package, paid vacation, sick leave, the comprehensive health insurance, life insurance, and the state-funded tuition. And we are interviewing every Thursday. As far as the special programs for the last 2 months, we've had the Bucks come, spend the day with the youth, basically just mentoring, motivating, as well as they set up some NFL-based drills and pretty much just spent the afternoon with them. Also, we had the Great American Teachers come with different business owners from the community, as far as barbers, hairstylists, restaurant owners that came and just spoke with the youth about starting businesses, giving them financial advice, investing advice, things like that. Also, ICSci, which is a science-based presenter that came and did some science projects, presentation, and interacted with the youth as far as doing some science projects. And major projects right now, we have our major project, we're doing 3 educational portables. They're being completely remodeled. We're looking at mid-February for the completion. So ready to get the kids back in the class setting, because right now we're doing class in, some in the dining hall, some on the actual pod or module that their living area. So it would be better to get them back in that educational environment so they can know it's class time. But other than that, that's pretty much it for detention right now.
Okay, and so we learned at the last meeting that Major Grice had departed. Have you been selected as the new superintendent, or are you acting?
Correct, yes, I was the captain under Major Grice for pretty much his whole term, so, yes.
Well, you're permanent in the position now.
Yes, sir.
Well, we welcome you to the board. We look forward to hearing from you, and definitely reach out to us if you need anything. Does anyone have any questions for, should we call you Major or Superintendent?
Either one works for me.
All right, I'll call you Major Cohen.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions for Major Cohen? Mr. Parkinson.
First of all, congratulations, Major.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome to the fray. I do have one question. You said you had 10 post-commitment kids in detention.
Yes.
What kind of turnaround time are you seeing right now with kids actually moving to commitment programs? There's been a couple periods over the last couple of years where the commitment programs were running at high capacity, and it took a while to get them in. Is that what's going on now with that situation?
Definitely, I would say we're still looking at about 90 days, basically 3 to 4 months, as far as them going on average. So they're sitting for a little bit. But yeah, but majority of the higher levels are taking the higher level programs, 8 or 10, are taking a longer time for the youth to get placed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Major Cohen? Thank you. Civil citations, Ms. Royston?
Okay. For the Juvenile Arrest Avoidance Program for the month of December 2023, we had 57 referrals. Last year, for December of 2022, we had 32 referrals, so we had increase of 25. The dominant charge was battery with 19 referrals, and then petty theft and affray being the next highest with 12 referrals each. I also looked at the stats since August of 2023. We've had an increase of 95 referrals compared to last year.
Thank you, Ms. Royston. Any questions for Ms. Royston? Thank you. Sins Fins, Ms. Grimmig.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to give you last month's data for youth served. And community counseling, we had 11 new clients. We had 142 SINS community bed days, 99 domestic violence bed days, 6 probation respite bed days, and 98 DCF bed days with us. Currently in shelter, we have 14 kids, and they, demographic of that is 2 of them are truancy court ordered, 5 of them are community kids, 2 of them are domestic violence, 1 of them is domestic violence civil citation, 3 of them are DCF kids, and we have 1 probation respite kid. And just a little update, previously we used to run a FIRAC program, which is an aftercare service for youth who have domestic violence charge or are currently on supervised probation. We are going to be reigniting that program under Ms. Hunter's oversight, and so we are going to be working really closely with some of these youth who are on probation, getting some wraparound services, up to 13 sessions of counseling and support within the 90 days. So we're going to be working with Kelly's team closely to hopefully get the more kids engaged in the resource of wraparound services. And that's all I have. So the probation and domestic violence charges, a civil citation youth does not qualify for that. It's special populations only, so they have to be charged.
Okay, so an arbitration case would count the diversion?
It should count, yes.
And Ms. Grimmig, just over the past, say, 90 days, how has the beds been for DV respite for civil citation? Has there been availability?
There is availability. We've had some ebbs and flows. We have had some refusals from parents for engaging in civil citation. And that's just going to continue education through communications with the community, because law enforcement, I think, has got a good, consistent handle on how they can present programs to families, but they still have the option to refuse services.
Have we had to turn any children away for lack of beds or anything like that?
Not for civil citation, no.
Okay, so there's continues to be availability.
For now, yes. But it's Friday, so be careful what you say.
Thank you. And I ask because we want to make sure that we maximize the use of those beds to ensure that children are receiving the civil citation versus a different alternative. And I'm happy to hear that we have capacity to handle at least our immediate needs. Thank you. We'll move on to old business. Any old business? Any new business? Okay, we will move on to presentations. Today we are joined by Christine Meister. She's from the Spring of Tampa Bay, and she's going to be presenting on one of their programs here. And Ms. Meister, the PowerPoint is loaded up, and you can go up to the podium, and thank you for being here, and we will give you our full attention.
Hi, folks. Good morning. So my name is Christine Meister. I am the Community Coordinated Response Trainer for the Spring of Tampa Bay. I am presenting today primarily about our prevention programming and our Peace in Action program. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Spring of Tampa Bay is the DCF certified domestic violence center in Hillsborough County. So most of what we are known for is going to be our crisis hotline, emergency shelter, and outreach services for survivors of domestic violence. But then we also have our prevention programming that does more work out in the community, working primarily with youth, talking about healthy relationships, dating violence, and then violence prevention as a whole. I'm speaking today on behalf of the prevention program. It's a program that I supervised for about 4 or 5 years. I have since transitioned out of that programming, doing more systemic work now. Our current primary prevention advocate, she could not be with us today, but we do have Ashley, who is the supervisor of that program, so she's here as well. So again, our youth prevention programming, that purpose is going to be to promote some of those protective factors for healthy relationships and then decrease risk factors. So we do that with programming in schools, or used to do programming in schools, programming in the community, and then our Peace in Action program. So some of those risk and protective factors that we look at, this particular graph or logic model, however we want to describe it, is actually regarding sexual violence, but we know that there's a lot of overlaps, and so I steal from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center quite often. But we're looking primarily at the individual and relationship level risk factors and protective factors with our prevention programming. So particularly looking at family violence and conflict, emotional supports, parent-child relationships, that hypermasculinity, delinquent peers, general aggressiveness and acceptance of violence, connections in schools, connections with caring adults, those emotional health and general connectedness, resiliency factors. That's what we're working to try to promote with our prevention programming. So again, the prevention team does more trainings at that community partner level, so training with schools, teachers, school counselors, school resource officers, community partners who work with youth. I know for a while we were working quite intensively with our SINSFINS program, doing presentations a couple times a month with some of those DV youth. And then we also have a bounty of different resources and materials that we are able to provide to the community. Some of those presentations with community partners, it's domestic violence, dating violence, healthy relationships, better accountability. We can do deep in-depth dives or do just general overviews. We do have 2 different sets of programming that we were primarily doing in schools. We have since received notice that there is a moratorium now on all different community partners doing presentations within the school district. So we are really trying to do some of this programming elsewhere, outside of schools. So we have 8 different sessions worth of content that cover oppression, privilege, bullying, healthy boundaries, harassment, assault, conflict resolution, media messages. So pretty much anything and everything related to healthy relationships, violence prevention as a whole. And then our most commonly requested presentation is specifically our Love Shouldn't Hurt, which is kind of our teen dating violence 101. The reason why I bring that up is because our Peace in Action programming mirrors a lot of that programming that we do out in the community, just with that added component of really focusing on youth resiliency and accountability for our own behaviors. So this program, it is an early intervention program, and I stress early intervention program, designed specifically to support that youth resilience. And its primarily target audience is going to be youth who are using violence to solve interpersonal conflict. So we're talking violence at home, violence with peers, or with dating partners. And there are 6 sessions total. Each session is average about 90 minutes. Most of our youth are referred by our court counselors from juvenile diversion, and we do occasionally get survivors of domestic violence who will also refer their teens into the program as well, that maybe a parent or survivor is noticing that my child is starting to show some of these same red flags that their abusive parent has, and so I would like to refer them into this program so that they can get some additional support if needed. So kind of overviewing each of these different sessions. So we start off with a discussion of resiliency and just defining abuse as a whole. So focusing on trauma, resilience, that importance of connection, social supports, all of those resiliency factors. And then also recognizing that while we can experience trauma, or while we can have something bad be done to us, we still have to hold ourselves accountable for our own behaviors. So validation of that bad thing that happened, but focusing on accountability at the same time. And then overviewing interpersonal violence as a whole. So in general, there are 2 topics that we cover each session. So the next week, session 2, we've got an overview of power and privilege, and then talking about anger as an emotion. So we define power and privilege, talk about cycle of violence, cycle of poverty, talk about how oppression in general leads to violence, and then we name different community partners, or not community partners, but maybe celebrities or something like that, that have used their power for good. And then we talk about folks who have been oppressed, but then responded to that oppression in nonviolent ways. And then we talk about payoffs, consequences, talk about anger as a concept and what that looks like, identifying our anger cues, and then creating a timeout plan for when we start recognizing those anger cues in ourselves. Session 3 is emotions and gender roles. It's probably one of my favorite conversations to have with some of these youth, is talking specifically about gender roles and societal expectations of men and women. We see that some youth come in and they're like, why are we talking about this? Men can do everything, women can do everything, gender doesn't exist. They will go on and on and on with a tangent, and then you have other youth who, no, men are this way, women are this way, and if we fall outside of these gender boxes, we're going to have an issue. And so it's really interesting seeing that dynamic happen, even amongst the youth themselves, hearing those conversations happening. Session 4 talks about healthy communication, conflict resolution. We do a lot of role playing and scenarios, validating some very difficult situations about how if somebody else gets into your face and is intentionally trying to make you angry, validating, yeah, you're going to get angry if somebody is cussing in your face, but how do we respond assertively? And so we do a lot of role playing and different scenario-based situations in that session. Session 5 is dating violence and accountability. So the whole first half of that session is essentially our dating violence 101. And then part 2, we talk about payoffs, consequences, and we do a pretty large accountability exercise. For some of those youth, as a part of their diversion programming, they're maybe required to write an apology letter or something like that. I usually give them that helpful hint that that accountability exercise that we do is great segue into that apology letter. And so talking about, this is what I did, this was my original intention, but this was the actual outcome, and what were my consequences, what was the consequences to this other person, what am I going to do next time? And we talk about the difference between accountability and ownership of our actions versus shame. And that shame is this idea that I did a bad thing, therefore I am a bad person, and that we want to get away from that concept and talk about ownership of our emotions and our own actions. And then the last session is going to be self-talk. So that whole internal dialogue that sometimes we can get into those situations where we hype ourselves up for a situation that our perspective was entirely wrong, and we get ourselves all aggravated and then realize, oh, I didn't need to get all angry about this situation in the first place. So we talk about self-talk, mindfulness, monitoring where our train of thought is going and learning to stop that train of thought before we get to that point of aggression and anger. We talk about empathy, perspective taking, and again, focusing on what did we actually want to have happen in this circumstance versus what actually happened and what was the actual outcome. And then we talk about stress responses, creating a stress plan, and then focus bringing it back to those resiliency tools, focusing on connections, social supports, and other resiliency techniques. So again, those are the overview of the 6 sessions total. I pulled our stats from 2017 up through last fiscal year. We can see there's a dip because between February and October of 2020, we halted the program with COVID, but you can see our trends seem to match what we've seen in juvenile diversion. From my understanding overall is that our number of youth in juvenile diversion has doubled since pre-pandemic. So we were seeing about between 20 and 30 youth pre-pandemic, and now the last 2 fiscal years, we've had upwards of 65, 67 youth in the program, and we are on track to do that again this fiscal year. Our referral and intake process, we did bring some program flyers and some copies of the referral forms with today. Essentially, we will receive a referral from the court counselor with a brief description of the incident. Our prevention advocate will schedule an intake appointment with this youth and with the parent or guardian. We typically tell this parent or guardian that we need about 2 hours to do this intake, and we will assess the youth and parents separately. And some of the things that we're assessing for are just kind of appropriateness of the referral in the first place, but we're also looking at general accountability, getting kind of a baseline standard for where this youth is at. And we also have a very strong understanding that a lot of the youth who are in this program have also witnessed or experienced violence at home, maybe witnessing domestic violence at home as well. So that is part of what we are doing in this assessment, is trying to gauge, is this parent who is here, are they being abused as well? We know sometimes that offending parent is the one who actually comes to that appointment, so we can't do much quite at that point, but if we can, we are going to try to recommend that, or try to refer that non-offending parent into our services. And we will also make then an appropriate referral for that youth where they might receive services from our youth advocate instead of going into our 6-session Peace in Action program. So that youth advocate, I think I have it here, that youth advocate is still going to meet with that youth, provide education, domestic violence education, like healthy communication, dynamics of healthy and unhealthy relationships, the safety planning, conflict resolution. They're still going to offer and talk about a lot of those same things that we would in the Peace in Action class, but it's going to be much more trauma informed, and they're also going to be able to provide other types of victim services to that youth that they might not otherwise get just in the Peace in Action class as a whole. Otherwise, if that youth is not doing victim services, the majority of the youth are doing the Peace in Action classes. They meet Monday evening over Zoom. The 6 sessions run on a rolling basis, so a youth can enter at any point in those rolling classes. We do have a cap, however, of 10 youth in the program at a time. So if we are at capacity, youth might have to wait a week or 2 before they can enter into the class after somebody else graduates. At the end of those 6 weeks or those 6 sessions, a youth will get a certificate of completion, and we can also send a copy of that to their court counselor as well. With those youth who are in our victim services, so they've been referred to Peace in Action, but again, we've determined that this youth could use some additional supports, more trauma-informed, and needs some more other victim-related referrals. That youth, on average, I want to say we typically have 3 to 4 meetings with them with a youth advocate, and then we will give them the same type of certificate that just shows, hey, we've talked about some of these things to help satisfy their requirements for their diversion program. Whew, okay, I tried to go through that really quickly. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Christine. And we've had the privilege of having your programming in the center, and it's really effective and valuable. My question is, are there efforts underway to either make adjustments to the curriculum or negotiate your way back into the district?
Yes, we do have a meeting actually next week, I believe, with members of the school board and at that district level. We had previously been in schools for over 10 years, providing programming regarding healthy relationships. There was a little bit of a lull. We had to get reapproved to go in after COVID. We got that approval, and then because of current climate and new state statutes regarding programming in schools regarding relationships and things like that, the district has put a moratorium on that. And so we are working on it.
Well, and that was going to be my question, because you had said there was a moratorium on outside providers coming in. Is that a blanket moratorium, or is it content-based based on what the presentation is on?
It sounded to me like it was a blanket moratorium.
Okay.
And we're going to work to clarify that, I think, next week. But I do know that it was specifically content-based at first that we received a no, and then now in our latest communications, it did sound like it was a blanket moratorium.
How has the moratorium impacted your ability to deliver the programming? I know you said you do it outside of schools now, but are you able to even remotely catch up to where you would usually be in delivering the programming?
Not at all. We were doing presentations and programming multiple times a week to several thousand youth per fiscal year, and that has significantly cut back because most of our presentations were in schools. So now we are working on trying to rebuild some relationships with different community partners. We can still do after-school type programming as long as it's not directly associated with the school district. So I know that Sinsvins was one of our strongest partners throughout this last year when we didn't have that school district approval. We can do presentations and programming with Girl Scouts, Boys and Girls Clubs, all of these other community partners, but the school district was our largest source of youth presentations.
Were you ever able to do any type of analysis on the impact of the presentations on reducing domestic violence?
We not recently, no. I know the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence used to do a pre-post test programming, but not recently. No, we haven't done that.
It'd be interesting to see if the halt on the programming in the school has any impact on children picking up domestic violence charges. And a lot of people don't know that a domestic violence charge, even for a child, that can be exclusionary for most military and law enforcement. It's one of the worst that you can have on your record, and it's hard to get past it. So hopefully we can find a way to deliver the programming.
Completely agree. We know that Florida state statute does require that there is domestic violence education in our school districts, but I know that the schools have had some challenges in implementing some of these healthy relationships curriculums, and even now, so I think there's a definitely a generalized fear of how to implement some of these curriculums. And so definitely fear for especially some of the victims in the school who need to know that they do have rights and that this is not a normal part of healthy relationships and growing up. So great, thank you.
Well, you all have some smart people over there. I'm sure you'll figure out how to do it the right way and get it done. And so wish you luck on that. Any other questions for Ms. Meister? Ms. Reynolds?
Hey, specifically for the Peace in Action program, can referrals only be done through the courts, or can, like, Success for Kids and Families can referrals?
Absolutely, yes. We have seen in general, like especially with those victims who want to refer their own children into the program, we have an issue with compliance sometimes because there's no buy-in for them to get it done, but anybody can be referred, yes.
Lieutenant Polk.
What age is this program available for?
13 to 17. We know that sometimes is a little bit of a barrier because we have had some 11, 12-year-olds who we've wanted to refer and bring in, but we know that 11 or 12-year-old is going to be in a very different place in life than a 17-year-old, and so we hesitate to have them in that same group together.
Sorry, one more question. We've really struggled with some of the remote programming, like doing stuff over Zoom and that kind of stuff. Is there something that you guys do in the program to, like, make sure the kids engage? Do they have to be on camera? Like, I don't, kind of stuff.
Yes. So right now we are transitioning, going back to having our intakes being done in person. The eventual goal within the next year or so is probably going to be to have those classes back in person as well. Right now they are still virtual. We do require cameras on, microphones on and off as needed, and we have activities where there is a slide deck that we use, but it is very, very interactive. We will have questions on the screen that then we expect the kids to write down their answers and then report back out about what they're writing down. So we do have that communication as a requirement of our program. So yeah.
And sorry for calling you Ms. Reynolds, Ms. Jeffries. Other questions? Ms. Meister, thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. And I do have copies of our spring brochures, palm cards. I know our court counselors had asked for some of those last time, so I brought a whole bag full with me. So thank you.
And may I distribute the PowerPoint presentation to the email group?
Absolutely. And then I'll also make sure that you have a copy of the referral form and the program flyer as well.
Thank you. I will do that. Okay, we will go back now to our Faith Community Network Subcommittee. Reverend Dames is not here. At our last meeting, we had discussed the proposal for the Juvenile Community Accountability Board. I had ran into Reverend Dames at the Martin Luther King Parade, and he had told me that has been kind of changed. And now it's more of a mentoring program, which I was happy to hear about. Are we able to discuss that at all today, or no?
Sure. I don't want to speak on Pastor James's behalf, but I can tell you that we are moving forward on the project. During the holidays, we had a meeting with the pastor. Those of you that weren't involved may recall that this mentoring program is very important to this group. And Commissioner Cameron Cepeda had some resources secured to get the program off the ground, with Allen Temple AME kind of coordinating it. We realized as a group that the faith-based community has a lot of organizations that are either already doing mentoring or are willing to do mentoring, which could provide added value to our youth. So Pastor Dames put together a project, potential project. It was focused on a quasi-neighborhood accountability model. He convened the faith-based committee, was it November-ish?
Yes.
We met, great feedback from the group. I think the pastor took it back and kind of remodeled his program. My staff also had some conversations with him about national and international best practices on mentoring, which we shared with him. He's also subsequently had some meetings with the school district and the children's board because they already had partnerships for vetting potential mentors, for putting mentors in specific schools. And then he basically came back to us with a concept to do this core mentoring program. And we are moving forward on a contract with him at the February 7th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. And it's sufficiently flexible that we'll be able to change it and adapt it to the feedback and needs of this board. The other added value, and again, I gotta praise the commissioner for this, is she was able to put Pastor Dames in contact with a couple other groups of faith-based organizations that can really expand the impact of this program. And Pastor Dames has been meeting with them and talking about partnering. In this model, Ellen Temple would coordinate everything, vet and train the mentors, supervise them, track the mentorships, because, you know, these youth will be going into mentorship, serve a specific mentorship program for a period of time, and then maybe become mentors themselves down the road. So he's going to be coordinating all that. Like I said, we have a solid model together. We're bringing it to the board for approval on February 7th. And I wish Pastor Dames was here because he's done a lot of good work getting with the school district and getting with the children's board to make sure that those background screenings and coordination of need in schools was really well vetted before the program comes to fruition. One of the things I would like to add is, because this started with a Juvenile Justice Board initiative, it's written into their contract that they're going to be providing updates to this group every couple of months. So I guess the group needs to decide, do they want those updates at the regular board meeting, or do they want him to continue to convene the faith-based committee on a regular basis? So that still remains to be decided.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Commissioner Cameron Cepeda, for helping put this in action. We always need mentors. It's a best practice, solid part of prevention, and so very much appreciate that. And let us know as a board what you need from us, other than receiving the updates, which I tend to think, we'll discuss it at the meetings, but I tend to think it should be at this meeting, just given the caliber of what it is, and more people hear it, fewer people come to the other meeting. But as far as input for needs and stuff like that, if you want that from us, we're happy to do that. And we're definitely happy to receive what's going on with the program and help however we can and however you want. So we very much appreciate that. Okay. Any questions? Ms. Justice.
Thank you so much. Mr. Parkinson, is the program, the mentorship program, being launched in phases? And if so, is it zip code or community-based, or how is it being rolled out?
So the pastor wants to initially target high-need zip codes. So areas like 33610, 33612, that we know we have a very high morbidity of juvenile justice youth. My understanding is he's also reaching out to, again, faith-based organizations, principals, to see where the key needs are in those community, where the need in the community is. The other thing I like to add, because the contract is going through the criminal justice office, we really emphasize the need for him to get referrals from juvenile justice programs, like civil citation, like youth going through traditional court, juvenile justice, mental health court. So that's kind of baked into the formula. And again, I wish the pastor was here to kind of expound on some of the work that he's done, but he has been shaking a lot of hands and building a lot of bridges over the last couple months. Does that answer your question?
It does. We'll be interested in finding out how it's actually materialized.
And I have no doubt that as he reports out to this group, that he's going to need your expertise and input on how the program evolves. And the commissioner has already articulated her desire to have longitudinal support for this program over time.
Mr. Ms. Laribor?
Mr. Perkinson, can you share the number of youth that the program intends to serve and the number of mentors?
So right now, we're thinking a minimum of 30 to 40 a year, but we're hoping that it expands in leaps and bounds and that, it becomes a problem of we have too many youth. But again, this will be dependent on how the program evolves. And, part of the pastor's responsibilities are going to be advertising and recruiting mentors and then training them. And that's not something, you can't flip a switch and have a cadre of mentors ready to go. He's got to recruit them, he's got to train them. Some, it's already baked in because the faith-based communities are already doing mentorship. So some of the partner agencies that the commissioner has gotten involved already have trained mentors, so I think that's the low-hanging fruit, so they can hit the ground running once they get vetted by the district and the children's board and any other place that we're reaching into.
One last question. Is it a one-to-one model for mentoring, or has that not been decided?
The mentoring is one-to-one, but each mentor will have possibly a number of mentees, at least initially.
Hey.
Ms. Jeffries?
You said that you're working with the Children's Board. I just wanted to make sure, through the ASO, I know that they already have a mentoring curriculum. So I just want to make sure that it hasn't been used in a long time. I just had a conversation with Rebecca Bacon about this for another reason, but.
Yes, and when you say you, it's not me, it's Pastor James. I'm just giving you updates on what he's provided to us. He has already met with the Children's Board, so understands that. And just so you know, my staff that have expertise in juvenile justice and mentorship, the curriculum and materials on best practices that they provided to Pastor James, shockingly, is not qualitatively different than what the Children's Board is already using, because they already use evidence-based models. So lots of parallels there. I think the big issue is, there's, I think, 5 or 6 key components in an evidence-based mentoring program. I think the big issue, we all know the recruitment, the hiring, it's when do we put a bow on the mentorship at the end? And there's a model for that, but this group also felt very importantly that longitudinal mentorship is important, so that it's not just a 6-month program or a 12-month program. What if that kid is experiencing some challenges a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Even if they don't need higher levels of mentoring for that 2-year period, they might need it again. So build in the ability for that youth to come back and get additional mentoring services with the same mentor. So. And
Ms. Williams?
One thing I'd like to add is DJJ also provides and funds and supports mentoring services in a variety of organizations. So making sure that this program is swimming in the same direction as those programs is going to be important.
Rob, you mentioned that there was going to be background screenings required for mentors. Is that a level 2 background screening? And then additionally, are there disqualifiers for youth to participate in this program at all?
So there's not disqualifiers at this time. I imagine as they start to implement, they're going to find some youth target populations that are maybe more challenging than others. We all know that we work with a variety of youth. Sorry about that. We work with a variety of youth, but again, to Pastor James's credit, he thinks he can help everyone at all times. So we're going to move forward with that expectation. As far as the background screenings, because they'll be plugging in with school youth and Children's Board youth, they'll have to follow their procedures, which is generally level 2 under Chapter 435. And my understanding is some of the folks that have expressed an interest in being part of the mentoring program have already gone through that process because they're mentoring in other areas. So.
Great. I was thinking more along the lines of, DCF youth still being accessible to having these mentor companions. So great.
And this is one of those great examples where now that there's a warehouse for level 2 background checks versus going to each individual agency is going to create a lot of efficiencies. In a program like this, 10 years ago, they would have had to be background checked through DJJ and then DCF and any other state agency they're involved in. So this does create some efficiencies.
Well, and it sounds like there's a bit of synchronicity here, or at least an opportunity, given that the Department of Juvenile Justice is having the mentoring conference in March. Maybe it'll be an opportunity to kind of hook the pastor up and some of the mentors to go receive that training as well.
I agree, and I've already sent the invite to the pastor.
Awesome, awesome. All right, well, the board stands ready to assist in whatever way. I understand it's not a board initiative, but we will receive the updates and assist however we're asked to.
Well, and I'd also like to add that the faith-based community has been in existence for many, many years, and it's more than just one program. So I have no doubt in my mind that there's going to be the need to meet, whether it's ad hoc or on a regular basis, to not only give insight and guidance for this program, but also additional programs that involve the faith-based community.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do we have any public comment today? Good morning. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for Lions World Vision Institute. I'm here today to talk about some information regarding the correlation between the high incidence of juvenile delinquency to undiagnosed vision issues. I'm here to bring attention to the necessity of comprehensive vision health care for children of all ages. Extensive research indicates how poorly developed visual acuity relates to our nation's compounding literacy problems. Our nation's reading literacy levels are well below the standards we've set, according to the National Center of Adult Literacy. NCAL's report on prison literacy states between 75 to 90% of juvenile offenders have learning disabilities, and up to 50% of adult inmates are functionally illiterate. Although it can't be said that inadequate vision is the only cause of learning disabilities or juvenile delinquency or reading problems, the importance of vision cannot be overlooked when considering a child's self-esteem, independence, and ability to function in the classroom. Nearly everything a child needs to do in class depends on good visual acuity skills, and Floridians already acknowledge that the importance of vision screenings in early childhood. So our schools are required to screen children's vision at certain ages. However, if there's any interference in a student's vision development, it places stress on the visual pathways. Children nowadays sit in front of TVs, computers, and smaller screens where they don't shift their focal point for long periods of time, resulting in diminished visual acuity. Therefore, children at any age may be at risk for visual issues. During our last community screening event, I met a young man who was 12 years old when last evaluated by an optometrist, and he had 20/20 vision. At the Bolts and Blue event, which is also a health fair, which we attended with the Mobile Vision Clinic funded by the Glazier Vision Foundation. Children nowadays don't know that they can't see well. It's not evident to them that their vision isn't clear. He noticed that he was having some trouble seeing in class after he came back to school following the pandemic. He noticed that he wasn't able to see as well as he could in his nearsighted vision. And we were able to determine through our digital screening tools an eye exam with an optometrist that same day, and having our opticians make glasses for him within a half an hour, that he did in fact need a prescription. He had been unable to see for a significant time. He was now 14 years old. So no telling how long he'd been struggling with his vision, but it could have gone on for the rest of his life. We talked about how his diminished acuity was likely happened over the time at home spending school on the screen. And while while he didn't know, a lot of adults also don't know that they're risking their visual acuity. This is just a simple diagram that we provide as a piece of our education, which tells us that every 20 minutes we should look at a focal point 20 feet away for 20 seconds. It helps to re-establish a faraway focal point, which, as many of us may know, that our nearsighted vision starts to diminish after age 40. So
You have 15 seconds.
So Lions World Vision Institute aims to honor sight as a basic human right. No family should have to live with the choice between vision care and necessities for their children. We want more caregivers and community members to understand the warning signs of vision loss. And we're able to do that now with state funding, go into community events and locations to provide free vision screenings, free eye exams, also ongoing vision evaluation and
Ms.
treatment.
Travis, we're at time.
Thank you.
I thank you very much for bringing illumination to this topic.
Let me know if you have any questions. I also have business cards, so we can.
You can. Any other public comment? All right, announcements. Our executive meeting next month is not going to be held at its customary location at the 6th floor Judicial Conference Room at the Edgecombe. We will be meeting instead. We've met there before recently. It's room 202 of the Edgecombe. If you take the escalator up and you look to your left, there's a cafe there, a snack bar, and right behind there is room 202. It's a classroom type place. It has plenty of room for everyone. Just make note of it. I don't know that I'll be able to put a sign or anything on the 6th Judicial Conference Room, depending on what's going up on there. So try to just implant it in your, I don't want to impact what's going on there. I know there's some important things going on there. So definitely, go ahead, Ms. Justice.
We could put some signage on the first floor so that it would direct people not to go all the way upstairs, if that would be helpful.
That would be, thank you so much.
Sure.
Other announcements? Okay, hearing no other announcements, we'll adjourn the meeting at 11:03. Thank you very much.